Welcome to Quick Tips with Chris. On today's episode, I have the one and only, my guru is what I call him, Mr. Jacob Campagnaro from REC Canada. He is the VP of the Multiplex division for REC, who is the #1 real estate investment company that helps investors in educating on how to continue to buy real estate and the advantages of learning before buying. Jacob, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you on. I'm so excited for this call. There's so much that we can talk about. I'd love to just dive right in, high level, closed notes version for that first time investor that's looking to buy a multiplex. Jacob, thank you so much for joining me. How are you today, Jacob?
Yeah, I appreciate it, Chris. Thanks, man. And that's one heck of an intro for me. Thank you. I think I have my own podcast, and I'm still working on my intros. So that's one heck of an intro. I think if I had you on, I would have said, "Hey, I got Chris here today." So so it's good. It's good to hear. But no, and I think it's a perfect topic, and I'm really glad you brought me on for it. You and I have worked together on a number of deals, and almost all of them multiplex, right? Multifamily, mixed use. And I love to go back and forth with you and work deals out. And that's the exciting part about commercial real estate, right? It's finding, hey, how does this one work? So yeah, man, very excited to be on. Thank you again. And where do you want to start? What do you want to talk about first?
I want to start from ground zero. I want to be able to help, as you know, as I mentioned, we educate our clients on building a financial blueprint in real estate, how to acquire multiple properties on the residential side. But as you and I both know, our clients now get to a point where they've built their wealth in real estate. They've got the 4 or 5 doors properties under their belt. They're looking to graduate and move to the next level, which is the commercial side on the multiplex. I'd love to start off just to ask, what is it that when you start off with a client and they want to know the multiplex overall, how to get started, what is a multiplex for that new investor?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? So everybody comes to us, you and I both, from different walks of life and different knowledge points and all of that. So, I like to take it. I'd like to take it right back with investors in what I call my real estate action plan. And it's almost like an investment action plan where we kind of sit back and say, okay, so, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer there, what is a multifamily building, right? If that's the right fit for you. So a multifamily building is considered 4 or 5 doors and more, 5 and 6 doors and more, right? And by doors, I mean units. Right. So you look at these buildings, your typical multifamily building, you're driving through, let's say, Mississauga, Hamilton, wherever, you'll see, they're kind of 2 or 3 story brick flat roof buildings, and they contain 6+, right? Purpose built is usually 6+. And those could be 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, dens, 1+ dens, or just bachelor units. But in the industry, I guess fancy and flashy way, we call them doors. Right. Yeah. So we like to see 6 or more doors. And I'll let you, Chris, you can touch on it because you're the mortgage broker, man. I want to hear your points. But, that changes the way we finance these buildings. And it changes the way we can invest in these buildings. So, it's a very, very interesting topic. But Chris, I'll let you take it away if you want to touch on financing and what that looks like. I'll hear it from you straight from the
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, high level, of course. It's nice to know that when you're buying commercial, you are, as the investor, you are the guarantor. Okay, and when we qualify to purchase that multiplex, it's not based just on income, credit, down payment. It's a little bit of a different approach, as you know, when it comes to income and expenses. So what do those rent rolls look like? How much does it cover in terms of the debt ratio on the property? Are we at that cap rate where the banks qualify you a little bit differently when it comes down to knowing whether the income property is producing revenue or if it's in a loss, if it's producing a loss?
Yeah. Yeah. And I always say this, Chris, is I say, when you come from residential, everything at the end of the day comes down to money earned versus money spent. Right.
Exactly.
Everyone, if whether it's, me buying something. So, I go to buy a personal residence. They're going to look at what my income and expenses are. Right. What do I earn versus how much am I spending on fixed costs? So, and it's the exact same thing with these multifamily buildings, right? It's what's coming in and what's going out. Now, the part I really like about it and what I tell all my investors is that the fact, when you get to that 5 residential units and the banks start getting a little bit, tighter with you, not to say you can't buy more than 5, but when they start getting a little bit tricky to finance these things, that's when I think the commercial world is perfect for these newer investors. Because the bank's going to sit back and they're just going to look at, okay, well, how is this building operating? Right? The bank's going to say, well, Chris, what's your credit? Because you're operating the building. I want to make sure you know what you're doing and you pay your bills. But at the end of the day, my money's going towards the building, not towards Chris. And
Right.
and that's what I really like about commercials, because you can get very creative with it.
Yeah.
And something I do with my investors and first thing we do is we sit down when we find one of these buildings, 6plex we'll use for example.
Okay.
I break out the performa, the almighty performa.
And let me just jump in. That performa is the science behind what you do. And I mean, if everyone had access to this performa, I think we'd be able to educate a lot faster, a lot seamless, a lot smoother. People would really be able to get a better indication as where do they fit? Like, are they in the position to buy? And does this work well for them? And a lot of the times is, we have a lot of investors that are thrown in all different directions. They want to do multiplex, they want to do student rental, they want to do buy and flip, they want to do burst strategies. So there's so many different things that they want to do. And I think you and I, as we do speak on a regular basis, we really try to make sure that the client is on that journey where we can walk them through that journey from start to end, knowing that if they've bought that first 2 properties and it's cash flowing and it's renting out, and to get qualified, does the bank have the strength in the client to say, are they in the position to even take on this type of a investment? And do they have the experience behind it? Similar to, do they have 2 properties? Are they paying it on time? Is it cash flowing? Do they have the experience in now taking their portfolio from the residential side into the commercial space?
Yeah. And just to add to that point, right? That's why, Chris, it's so important that people like you and I, right, the realtor and the mortgage broker, we got to work hand in hand, right? And it's a game of chess we're playing here, right? Or it's 3 moves ahead we need to be thinking.
That's right.
We're buying 1 residential, then we're buying another residential. By 3rd residential, that's when you, Chris, you start having that commercial conversation. And that's exactly when I start having that conversation. Right.
Yeah.
And, contrary to, I guess, popular belief, I know a lot of people come to me and they say, well, I want to buy commercial. And I was told I don't need a pre-approval for commercial. And in a way, they're right. There is no pre-approval. You're not locking in a rate. You're not going to go get your pre-approval for X amount, but it is paramount that these investors moving into the commercial space meet and speak with a commercial broker, right?
Absolutely.
And work with that broker and build a relationship and a strategy. There's too many times where I see clients come in and it's, they bring me a commercial deal or I bring them a commercial deal and we say, okay, look, let's run the numbers, let's break it down. And then I find out that they're working with, 2 or 3 different brokers and this and that, and everybody's giving them different ideas. And I'm saying, whoa, let's take a step back, because we got to find, let's find out why you're buying, and then let's find the right broker for you. Right. Or the one broker for you. And it's super important. So that's why I like working with you, Chris, because, just for example, that beach property that we're looking at, right? I'm not going to give out addresses or names or anything, but we've been now it's almost 2-3 months. I think we've been back and forth on it. And, just setting up a structure for this one particular client we have, right? Because it's his first commercial property. And it just so happens that this was pre-construction, so it wasn't ready for sale over the last 3 months. And you and I kind of were going back and forth, working with this client, setting out different scenarios and different structures. And we're looking at, Airbnb versus long-term versus, short-term and all that good stuff. So, yeah. And I think it's just extremely important that you have the correct team and the right people behind you, even before you start analyzing your first property using that pro forma. And I just had to say that. Sorry, I know I'm getting off track here, but I think it's an important
such
message.
A great point, because I think you and I we resonate the same, and our whole team, like with the RSC team itself, we really like to make sure that the client knows what they're doing, when they're doing it, how they're doing it, with who they're doing it. And that journey that I'm talking about is really getting them into, sure, they got the 3, rental properties on the residential side.
Yep.
Graduating onto the commercial side is really giving them that ammunition and the education around how do they purchase that next property on the multiplex side? What's the advantages and disadvantages? How do they qualify? And, you do a phenomenal job, which is why I call you the guru, only because you've got it all down. Like you resonate with me so well, because I'm very particular with how many properties somebody has, what's that roadmap look like, when do they actually transition into the commercial space. So to your point, yes, I mean, that one that you're speaking to with a mutual client, that is a great opportunity. And I think that based on their financials is really how we also want to make sure that they're in the position to support. Like, do they have net worth? Do they have additional savings? Are they in the position to make sure that if the property is negatively cash flowing, do they have the difference to make up in the short term?
Yeah, exactly. And if you want, we can kind of run through a little bit of let's not a role play, but a pro forma breakdown, right? For people that are saying, well, what's a pro forma? Hold on, right? What are you guys talking about? And it's so essentially, a pro forma is it's just an Excel sheet that I've created, and it works for everybody. You don't need to be a mortgage broker. You don't need to be a realtor. And it's basically we try to keep it as easy as possible, right? And it's breaking down the income and expenses of a building and spitting out a debt service ratio and a cap rate, right? And we'll get to those, but those are the most important 2 parts.
Exactly.
But it really is. It boils down to, okay, so line 1, and I don't have it here in front of me, but I'm going to try to use my memory to kind of go through line by line. But it's so the first line on it is income. What is the annual income for the year, or the monthly? Doesn't matter. But what is the income? So usually that can be obtained by a rent roll or lease agreements, right? So if you're not using me or Chris and you just want some knowledge on how do you analyze these things, well, you reach out to the seller, you reach out to the listing agent, and you ask for, the rent roll or the lease agreements, right? You want fact. You want to be able to have the piece of paper in your hand that shows exactly what the rental rates are. You don't want to go in just off of, oh yeah, it's roughly this, or something scribbled on a napkin, right? I always say I want to have the actual rent roll here. So that will give you the income of the building, right? And that's the rental income. Then we can say, okay, well, what is there? Laundry? Is there parking revenue, right? So those are other revenue sources. Most buildings will have common laundry, and it's $2 for a wash, $2 for a dry. I see it creeping up every couple of months. I think it's up to like $4 now, but so for a 6-unit building, you can assume, well, there's another $2,000 a year.
Yeah.
Right, $2,000 to $3,000 a year, depending on how many machines and how often it's being used. And again, we can use industry standard, right? And just assume, hey, 4 machines, $2 a dry, $2 a wash, 6 tenants. How often do they do the laundry? Great. We put the numbers in. The next line after that is going to be your vacancy rate. And this is the one thing where people kind of, they say, well, how do I find the vacancy rate? They start scratching their head a little bit, right? The building's fully occupied. Why do I need a vacancy rate? Are kind of the questions I get, and it's extremely important. So vacancy rate, it's easy as a Google, right? Like just this morning, I was looking at something in Brantford, and I Googled vacancy rate in Brantford 2022,
Yeah.
right? And boom, it came up. There it was. It was 1.9%, and which is amazingly low for these areas, right? But the vacancy rate is going to give you that buffer for when those units come vacant, right? So at 1.9% for this particular property, it was like $80 a month.
Okay.
Right. So $80 a month you should save in your bank account for when one of these units comes vacant. Because if it does, it's going to cost you over that month period to get leased. And there's where that $80 comes in handy.
Yeah.
Right. So all of these things just, and all the expenses and the renovations and maintenance, it's important for investors to know that, it's not like that's coming out of your pocket every single month, but rather it's going to be the rainy day fund that you keep in the account, right? For when things happen, when it gets vacant, when the roof needs a little bit of a repair. Moving down from there, just to keep this quick, because I don't want to get bogged down here, but moving from there, you're going to have your expenses section. So in the expenses section, it's the same thing as the income, right? You go to Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, and you say, hey, can I see your hydro bills? Can I see your gas bills? Can I see your water bills? We'll get 12 months of each. We go and we add them up, and there's our 1 year water, 1 year gas, 1 year hydro. Obviously, property tax goes in there. Yeah. We're going to put our property tax in. Again, there should be a 2021 final bill or a 2022 interim bill, and you should be able to calculate the tax rate from that. You're going to have your insurance. Now, insurance, it's as easy as reaching out to your insurance broker, right? Give them a call. Hey, I'm looking at buying this building. It's this old. Roughly, what's my rate on this? It's extremely important to try to verify all of these numbers as much as possible. There's too many times where I see people come in and they've assumed all these numbers, right? Which is fine for a really quick analysis, but when you go into these commercial deals, you're going to start paying for appraisals. You're going to start paying for environmental reports, building condition reports, and they're not cheap.
No.
Right? Like I know we're probably $25,000 to $4,000 for an appraisal these days. We're, $35,000 to $5,000 for an ESA, depending on what type of property. And then your building condition, again, you're looking at probably $2,500 to $3,500. So you're right there. You're blowing about 10 grand in DD. Before you write that offer, let's verify these numbers, make sure the deal works. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, and that's why the Performa is so handy. Because you use the same one, I use the same one, and a first-time investor looking at their very first building can use the exact same one and put together the exact same information that you and I do.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it just gives power to everybody to be able to run their own numbers.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, it's going to break down, and you're going to have your mortgage section, and that's when you reach out to your lovely mortgage broker like Chris, and you say, hey, Chris, I'm running a Performa on this building. Take a look at it for me. Let me know what the rates are today.
Yeah.
Right.
Perfect.
We punch it in. It's going to be, 25-year AM, 30-year AM, this rate, this loan to value, and you punch it right into the Performa, and then it's going to spit out your cash flow number for you. And that's the most beautiful thing, to see that at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right. You've done all your work. Now what are we earning? What's this actually putting in my pocket?
Yeah.
And yeah, so, anybody who's just looking at getting into these commercial things, Chris, I'll send you my Performa, the one I use. You're welcome to put a link, or anybody listening can download it, or you can email it to them directly. And it's just, even if you're not buying and you're just learning or exploring, study with it, right? Yeah. Grab it and do 3-4 buildings.
Yeah.
And just see how it comes out on your own, with your own math and your own investigation. Right. And it really clarifies things for a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, at the time of this recording, where are you seeing most of, where are you putting your investors? Where are you seeing the most multiplex properties, and what areas are you seeing this in? Yeah,
that's a really good question. So, and it's a question, I'm sure you get it every day and I get it every day, where do we invest next? So I personally, and this is going to be personal preference a little bit.
For sure.
But yes, always investing. Look, go downtown Toronto, go downtown Hamilton, Obviously amazing spots. Barrie, an amazing spot to invest, but you're going to pay for it because it's that amazing spot. The vacancy rates are low. The employment's very high. You have a lot of renters. But what I like to do is look a little bit further afield, right? If you imagine a pebble in a pond, right? What happens? It kind of ripples out. Mm-hmm. And if Toronto's the pebble in the pond, right? Where can we go next? Well, it was Barrie.
I love this. Right? This is awesome. Amazing. Yeah.
And now Barrie's Toronto pricing. I don't know if last time, you were up there, Chris. I was there just last week, and we were looking at rentals, and it was you might as well go rent downtown. Same pricing, right? So then the people that were living in Barrie before those prices hit, where did they go? Well, they went to Aurelia, right? Just another 30 minutes north.
Yeah.
And so that's a very good investor market right now. So a lot of my guys, 3-4 years ago, we were going to Barrie. And then a year and a half ago, I said, no, Barrie's, if you're looking to get that lift, Barrie's out, next spot, right? And we just went to the next ripple, which was going to be Aurelia, which is a fantastic market and also growing tremendously. And it's the same way moving south, west, east, right? You look at places like Hamilton, tremendous investing market. Every day I see an article telling that it's the best investing market in Canada. And you know what? So my clients are now going to Brantford.
Yeah.
Right. My clients are now going to Woodstock. These smaller towns, which still are commutable, right? You still have transit hubs. You can still go from Brantford to Hamilton if need be. But Brantford itself has tons of industry and they have a university campus there, and there's reasons to be there. So look for these smaller towns, right? And try to think to yourself, well, where's that ripple going to go next? Mm-hmm. And that I think is a very important message for anybody looking to get into multifamily for the first time, who doesn't have a large portfolio or the capital to go buy downtown Toronto or buy downtown Hamilton.
Yeah. And are you seeing a lot of these properties that have built-in equity in them in these areas?
Yeah, most definitely, right? Because you're coming into these towns which everything around them has increased in pricing. Everything around them is inflated. And now it's time for this town to inflate, right? So you see these buildings, you're coming in and you're buying them with rents at 300, maybe not 300, but 500, 600, 700, right? I'm looking at one myself right now where the average rent in the building is $650 for a 2-bed.
Oh, wow.
Right. And it's exactly, that was my response, right? So, so yeah, you've instantly built an equity with buying something like that, because one tenant moves and there's almost $700 in lift.
Yeah.
A month for that unit, right? And just as a quick little exercise, you can take 700 times 12 and divide that by a 4.5 or a 5% cap rate and see what value that would add to your building, right? So with these smaller towns, yes, and that's a great way to put it, Chris. There's built-in equity, more so than the bigger towns.
Yeah. I mean, on top of that, I mean, we're seeing a lot of assuming a lot of the tenants in the building, which is one of the advantages. But on the disadvantages, the rents are still low, right? So it's when does it catch up? When do we get to that point where the rents are going to start to climb slightly, aside from what we can do annually?
Yeah.
What was your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and that's really the $1 million question, right? Because if anybody could go in and take an 8-unit building and turn over all the tenants overnight, that's the jackpot there. But there's what I've been seeing, Chris, is there's new programs coming out. You look at CMHC, there's the new affordable housing program.
Awesome program, by the way.
Amazing program, something that I'm exploring myself right now. Right where, and correct me if I'm wrong. I don't have notes in front of me, but I believe for that program, they're saying that they'd like to see 40% of the building under 30% of the market median or something like that.
Yeah.
So for my case study, the building I was looking at, there was a 12-unit building, and the market median or the percentage below market median would be 980.
Okay.
Right. So my rents could not exceed 980 in the building. All of my rents were under 980. right? So I picked the seven highest units. That's my 40%. And I capped them at 980. And, going with these programs, we're looking at a potential for a 85 to 95% loan to value,
which is
right? 5% down on a commercial building. Like it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And we're looking at something close to a 35 to 45-year AM. And I know in certain cases, they're even saying a 50-year AM for newer construction.
Yeah.
So, the government's coming in, they're putting some new plans in place. Yes, there's always, turning tenants over, right? And which has become harder and harder, and that's why I didn't want to go there first, because, you read all the books, you listen to all the podcasts, and they say, oh, well, just turn your tenants over, right? Just offer them money and they'll leave. Not always the case. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But it's getting harder and harder, right? Because these people are having less and less places to move to.
Sure. And we don't really want to be that landlord that starts to evict tenants anyways. So.
No, definitely not. Right. So, and there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. And you see articles every day, big bad Toronto landlord kicking all these small town people out. Yeah. You don't want to be that. That's not the article you want your face in. Yeah. So there are ways to approach it. There's a humanitarian way to approach it. Some of these scenarios are, people want to move, right? They got 2 kids in a 1-bedroom apartment plus themselves and their partner. They want to move. They just don't know where. They don't have that push, or they don't have the money to do it. Those are the instances where cash for keys can work very well for everybody.
Oh, I love it. If you can just take a second and expand on the cash for keys piece, because I don't think a lot of people will really know what that means.
Yeah. And yeah, so cash for keys is the concept of basically paying tenants to vacate the space, right? And that's the truth of it. It doesn't sound very friendly or happy, but it's funny. And I've definitely done it in my career. And again, I'm never one to say, you have to leave, I'm kicking you out. I'm not about that. I think what goes around comes around, right? And there's proper ways to do it. And more than not, if you have a conversation with these tenants and just say, hey, look, you know what, like legitimately, we're doing renovations here. It's going to be uncomfortable for you. Have you ever considered moving? Would you need help moving? Do you need a realtor to help find a new place? Right? All of these questions. And you'd be shocked. Yeah, it's not going to always be 100%, but there's always a decent portion of tenants that go, yeah, you know what? I've been thinking about moving. My roof leaks. This place is kind of crappy. I want to get out of here. Well, you know what? Here's 2 months rent, so you can go put a deposit down on something else, and you're helping me, and I'm helping you.
Right.
And it's a fantastic thing, right? When that works out well. So cash for keys is that process exactly, saying here's a couple months rent. Use my realtor. He's going to help you find a new place, and let's get you out of here. Right. And you would go and you'd sign your end form to terminate the lease, and now you have a vacant unit, which in most cases needs quite a bit of renovation, but you build it into your numbers, you increase the rent by $700 to $800 a month, and you're, off to the races.
Yeah.
Right.
And at the end, after the renovation, we can always refinance at the end of it all.
And that's it.
Pay the investor back. I'm shocked that, there's so many investors that aren't really clear on what the mistakes they make, because it just happens on its own. But what are you seeing on what investors are doing when it comes to the mistakes that they make? Is it something like this where they don't know how to potentially move the tenant out?
Yeah. I think most mistakes fall around poor understanding of how buildings operate, or poor understanding of how the tenants operate, or lack of knowledge in property management, right? That's the biggest thing I see, right? Where intentions are in the right place, the strategy's there, the numbers make sense, you pull the trigger, you go buy, but you choose not to use property management to save a couple bucks,
Yeah.
and you end up paying for it, right? Because then it's, maybe you approach the tenants with the wrong conversation to increase rent, or, you're so busy doing your day job that you forget to manage the building properly after hours.
Right.
And that's why I like to really sit back with anybody who's looking to buy, and have that conversation that we did when we first started, Chris, you and I on the podcast here, which is, okay, great. You own 2-3 single family duplexes. Are you managing them yourself? Yes, I am. Okay, great. Do you have the expertise and the knowledge to go manage a 12 unit building now and properly, work with the tenants and that, and, if it's yes, great. If it's no, that's not a problem. Right. There's many lawyers and doctors I work with where they say, I want to buy a multifam. And I go, great, that's perfect. And they go, but I want to do a BRRRR. And I say, not so perfect. Hold on. Because I know how busy they are. Right.
Yeah. And just for the side of the chat, just for the ones that don't know what BRRRR means, it's
perfect.
You're buying, you're renovating, you're refinancing, and then you're renting out the property.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Right. So, and in that process comes cash for keys, comes management of building, right? So it kind of all comes full circle. But and even myself, right? Like I'm an active investor myself, but would I go and take on a full renovation project? I just don't have the time, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Don't be ashamed. Don't say, oh, I'm not doing the right thing, because that's what all the rage is right now. It's everybody talks about BRRRR, and they're great. Don't get me wrong, but there's other investments as well. Right. So that's another mistake I see a lot, where people take on a little bit too much.
Yeah.
Right.
And just to your point earlier, the banks are so finicky when it comes to, is the client in the position to that property management aspect of it? Are they in the position to run the property? Do they have the right property management in place? Do they know anything about real estate when it comes to the Landlord and Tenancy Act, renting out your units, positive, negative cash flows? Like, how does that all encompass into them being able to facilitate or take on this new building, which has 8 units or 6 units in there?
Right. And I don't know about yourself, Chris, but I've definitely run into a few scenarios where the banks, the condition on the commitment letter was actually, we want you to get a property management company.
100%.
Right.
Yeah. And rightfully so. I think it definitely needs to be encompassed into the overall expenses, because a lot of people aren't the experts in this sector of multiplex.
Yeah, whether you have the knowledge or you just don't have the time, right? And I think that's a really big one, and it's a tricky conversation to have, and I have it daily about the whole look. I know it's 6%, 7% property management. I get it. It sucks.
Yeah.
But right, you working at your day job will make you more than 7% of your gross income, right? What you're spending on property management, you can make double that in the time it would have took you to drive down to the property 2 hours away and go, clean up the garbage or fix the lawn.
Yeah. And I find a lot of times people forget about the appreciation on the property, which is absorbing that cost. Exactly. Right? It's just a matter of time, how long it's going to take for it to appreciate before you can pay yourself back.
Right. And then, and even on top of that, Chris, you have your annual rental increase. Right. So, this year, I believe it's 1.9%, something like that. And it's been more in other years, but still there's a lot of scenarios where, okay, I go buy the property. And maybe in year one, I have to eat a little bit of the cash flow, right? Yeah. It's going to be a couple $100 negative every month. But as soon as I get that 1 year mark and I can get that 2.2% increase, I believe it's 2.2% actually, let me correct myself, but it is. 2.2% increase. Oh, then all of a sudden now it's breaking even or cash flow positive. Right. So a big thing is these buildings are longer term plays, right? If you're coming in to make a quick buck off an apartment building, you actually might be better off buying a duplex or a triplex,
for sure,
or flipping a single family home.
Yeah.
If you're coming into the commercial realm, I always say I like to have a minimum 5-year plan, and the longer the better, right? You build wealth in real estate by holding it.
100%. And I think the difference between the two is also cash flow versus appreciation.
Yeah. It's the ability to appreciate the building, right? Again, through, it's not just one unit you're turning over or 2 units you're turning over, but now you have 12 or 6 or 20.
Yeah.
And every time you increase that rent by $200, $300, $400 on the back end, that's almost, 150, 250. So it's long-term and high appreciation. That's what excites me about the commercial side of real estate.
Yeah.
And obviously economy of scale.
For sure.
Right. 2 units go vacant. That's okay. I got another 8 here that are going to help me out.
That's right.
Or, it's same thing with repairs, right? The roof, 1 roof for 20 units versus 20 roofs for 20 units.
Yeah.
Or furnaces. There's many reasons, right? Many, many reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a matter of also how many of these investors are in the position to understand it all. And also what I say, to have the skin for it.
Yeah.
Do they have the thickness of the skin to be able to, if it does negatively cash flow? I like to look at it as, for me personally, I'm not I don't invest in RSPs. I'm a little bit biased towards real estate, so all my money's in real estate. But
you and I both, yeah.
But I mean, if it's costing me, the $300-$400 a month, from my perspective, it's the same thing as me paying that $300-$400 towards an RSP.
Yeah.
I just don't have to wait till I retire to get that money. I can put it towards my own investment into the property, and I can always pull out the money whenever I want.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's actually a really, really good point. It's everybody, I think, gets caught up on cash flow a lot. And yes, cash flow is important. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, hey, go buy 100 negative cash flowing buildings. I don't think that's the strategy. But you got to look at it as almost like a business, or as your portfolio, right?
Absolutely.
You look at what these, larger companies do.
Mm-hmm.
If you own those 3 duplexes or single families, right, Chris, and those are all cash flowing for you. Well, what's stopping you from going to buy the bigger 8 unit, 9 unit? And yeah, maybe it has a bit of negative cash flow, but don't worry about it, because in the same portfolio, in the same corporation, we already own 3 properties that are cash flowing very well for us.
Exactly.
And it all balances out at the end of the day, right? So with my portfolio, it's not so much one building at a time. I look at it more as a larger scope and say, okay, well, First Street's going to pay a little bit into my pocket here, and that will cover some of the negative over on 3rd Street. But at the end of the day, everything's gonna cash flow at my 5-year plan.
Right.
Yeah.
And it works out in the end. At the end of it.
It always does.
Yeah. We always say one hand feeds the other. We need 2 hands to clap.
That's it.
Right. But
that's it, man.
But no, I think a lot of like what we're seeing also on the investment from all the investors we deal with is more so to get into the property, right? Which is, and I can't thank you enough for sharing all of the insight, because you've really just given high level from start to end as to what that investor can do, how they can do it, how do they get started. Yes, I know it always starts off with me, but I always say, you are the one that is really going to show them the actual tricks to the trade.
Yep.
I'm just the numbers guy. I'm just getting you the money, which is allowing you to purchase the property. But a lot of the ones that we're working on now, it has a lot to do with the rent rolls, right? That are coming in.
Yeah. And Chris, I think, just going full circle with this thing, right? It always comes back to having the right team in place. You use Chris for the mortgage, you use me for the finding and buying of the property, you use the property manager for the property management of the property. You have these teams, and that's why it's important to use professionals that focus in this space, right? Use the commercial mortgage broker, use the commercial realtor. And why I, send clients to you, Chris, is because, it's the same thing, right? It's always, use Chris for the mortgage, but Chris is going to recommend somebody else for the property management, right? Or a painter or a roofer, right? It's all about having the right team in place.
Yeah, 100%. And Jacob, like having you and being a part of the team together is like I said, it's next to none. It's been over 10 years, decades since I've been in the industry, and it's hard. To your point, it's very difficult to find the right team of experts. And we are in the sales industry. I get it, but for me, for you and I, and for the whole team, like I mentioned earlier, we're very big on the educational piece before anyone buys. And I always say to people, I'd rather you take my time and our time first, as opposed to taking the bank's time, not knowing whether or not you're even able to qualify or if it's the right property for you.
For sure. And I say it and it's super cheesy, and I'm sure everybody, if any of my clients are listening, they're going to say, oh, here he goes again with this saying. But I always say to people that I don't sell real estate. I educate on real estate. Right. And, you and I both have a very similar structure to that. And we're both, successful in what we do. So I think it speaks for itself, but I'm never going to push somebody that I don't feel is right into the building or into the house. Because, believe it or not, you tell somebody no, and it's going to build a lot of respect.
Yeah.
And the same person that I told no to, I'm going to pick the phone up one day and say, yes, this is the one, buy it. Right. And the very next day we have an offer in, and it's on your desk there, Chris. So
well, you know what, the due diligence that we do, I think it's far from the rest of, not to say we're the best and the greatest, and as much as I say we are in the same breath, but there's not a lot of people that I can tell you that take the time like we do to actually map out where the client is today and where they're going to be in the next 3 to 5 years. And I say this because when you're going into the multiplex space, that 3 to 5 years now becomes 5 to 10 years.
Yes.
Right. And it's a longer term, it's a longer projection, it's a longer portfolio. And that journey, I think, is really what you and I pride ourselves on, knowing that we can hold their hands, the investors' hands along the way. Right. So,
well, that's it, right? 5 to 10 years is a long time for somebody to be cursing your name. So you better do the right job, For sure though. But I can't agree with you more.
Yeah, no, it's I think for everyone that's listening, I think the education around what we've spoken to today is really going to help them even take that next step. Jacob, your podcast is phenomenal. Jake's Take.
Thanks, Chris.
I love the actual name around it as well. But for any of our listeners that want to get in contact with Jacob, where's the best place they can reach you?
Yeah, most definitely. So like you said, Chris, anybody who's just looking to get some knowledge around real estate can check out the podcast, Jake's Take. That's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, all the places. If you're looking to reach out to me, you can always go to my website, which is reccanada.com. Right, you can find the commercial tab there and directly reach out to me, or you can reach out to me by email. I'll give my email out. I have no problem, which is jacobc@reccanada.com. Feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to share that pro forma that we talked about earlier. And likewise, I'll give that to Chris. And I know, Chris, you already have a couple copies of it, but you can email Chris. I'm sure he'd be happy to share it with you as well. We share these things and we can all build together.
Absolutely. And to all of our investors who is in the position where they are looking to take that next step, I welcome the call. You're more than welcome to reach out to me. You can email me. You can book an appointment or schedule a call with me on Calendly at Speak to Chris. And I'll be happy to get you started. I'll definitely share that pro forma once we do sit down and I map out your portfolio. Jacob, you're definitely the next go-to to pass on the investor to get them to look at that next property. And I'll let you do what you do best when it comes to that piece. And I can't thank you enough, Jacob, for coming on the call today. It's always a pleasure, and I always have this big smile on my face because you're such a wealth of knowledge. And it's usually me that talks the most. Like anyone that knows me, they're like, "Oh, Chris doesn't stop talking." But I'm so glad that you took on the mic and you took the floor. So
no, right on, Chris, and I'm glad you said that. Yeah, I was trying to do my part today.
You did.
Trying to speak more here, but no. Anyways, I thank you very much for having me on. Appreciate it, and we'll speak again in the future here. Thank you.
Thanks again, Jacob. My pleasure.